What are esteemed Carlotta's biggest pros and cons? That's what I'm here to tell you today. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. I think if there's one really noteworthy thing about Carlotta, is the fact that she's proven herself to be a very consistent unit over time. Ever since her release, she has remained as an absolute top tier DPS. Even though we've gotten plenty of other strong DPSs since her initial release, she's still absolutely amazing. Despite us having so many new damage dealers, her own damage still remains as being very high. And she's still easily able to take on a very wide variety of situations. She stood the test of time. This is especially relevant because while it is true that Wuthering Waves doesn't really have any one particular bad main DPS, Carlotta's remained top tier for a very long time. For example, Jinchi used to be the absolute de facto best DPS in the game during 1.x. However, as we got more and more 2.x DPSs, even though she still remained as being a good unit, she wasn't the absolute cream of the crop anymore. Whereas with Carlotta, even though we've gotten plenty of new 2.x DPSs, her damage still remains as being extremely impressive, earning her a seat as being one of the best DPSs in the game. Because of this, there is one way that I would describe investing in Carlotta: safe. She is incredibly safe to invest your astrites into, no matter whether you're a newer player or if you're an older one. The situations in which she excels in, she only continues to excel in. She's also the only limited 5-star Glacio DPS that we currently have in the game, and I personally can't see her being replaced anytime soon. Augusta's coming out soon and she's likely to replace Shangli Yao, and that was a unit that came out during 1.x. I personally wouldn't expect a better Glacio DPS to come out until 3.x. Overall, just making her a very safe investment in general. And to further build upon this point, she has a ton of variety when it comes to her team options. Now Joja is indeed her best installed teammate. Vasily Painter's outro skill providing a crowd ton of glacial percent and skill percent is an absolute dream for the Montelli lady. However, you're not locked into using her. Granted, she's your absolute best bet if you want to play Carlotta's absolute best hyper carry team. But with that being said, she's not your only option. If you're willing to learn quick swap, then using Changli can get the job done just fine. In fact, that team can perform splendidly if you're able to execute it well. And that's not all. You can even use her with other characters that provide skill percent and outro, such as Cantarella and Brent Wuthering Waves. Those two teammates aren't as desirable as simply using Joja, however, the point stands that you're able to use them, and considering how Brent is quite a flexible pull in general, it's actually a realistic use case for him. Otherwise, there's always the tried and true free-to-play friendly option of Sanhua, and if you don't want to use her, then Yang Ying's always an available option. You genuinely have so many team options when it comes to Carlotta, meaning that you can easily fit her on any type of account, whether you have a ton of characters or whether you have barely any. She's going to be a great addition to your roster all around. And I think one of the most obvious pros when it comes to Carlotta is that she's an absolute single target queen. She is one of the absolute best characters that you can choose if you're trying to fight boss scenarios, and of course, hologram bosses as well. Her kit is generally very single target focused, which makes her absolutely excellent for taking on these boss scenarios, and since boss content tends to be the hardest content in the game, this naturally lends her to being quite a strong character. You're most definitely going to find a lot of use out of her in most TOAs, and I should also mention that her ease of use is very, very high. It is not hard to understand Carlotta gameplay. Basically anybody can pick her up and understand what they're doing, and do a lot of damage while doing so. There are some characters in this game that can only really access their top potential if you know what you're doing, or characters that will only really perform if you're willing to put a bit of extra time and effort into optimizing them. But in Carlotta's case, you can very easily make her perform well at a baseline. Now granted, you can definitely learn better positioning and such to make her perform better, but if you're a newer player or somebody that just wants a more casual experience, Carlotta is very beginner friendly, and she's definitely going to offer you a very powerful experience while not really having to do much. I also consider Carlotta to be one of the more free-to-play friendly units in this game. This is for two very simple reasons. Reason number one, she doesn't really need her signature weapon in order to feel really strong. There are certain limited 5-star characters in this game where they just simply don't feel that good if you don't have their 5-star weapon, or some characters where they do feel fine enough on a standard 5-star weapon, but they just feel so much better if you have their limited 5-star. Well, in Carlotta's case, while she does indeed heavily benefit from Last Dance, you can put her on Static Mist and she's still going to feel extremely strong. This is simply because her damage at a baseline is genuinely just that high, so you're easily able to use Static Mist and get by just fine, which you can't really say for some other characters. And no, I'm not trying to compare her to really extreme cases such as Brent and Carlotta. I more so mean a character like Zani, who really does want their signature, but they're not exactly as reliant on it as say somebody like Carlotta or Brent. Overall, the main point is, Carlotta is one of those characters where you can skip out on the signature weapon and she's still going to feel extremely complete as a character. So if you're unable to get her signature weapon for whatever reason, well then Static Mist is going to serve you just fine. Combine that with the fact that her teammates are very flexible and she's easily able to use free-to-play friendly teammates, you're going to be just fine if you don't have premium options for her. Because there are some characters like Frolova who have very free-to-play friendly teams, such as being able to use Donjin for example, but then they really want their signature weapon, or vice versa. Carlotta is the perfect storm for creating a character that is very easy to pick up and get using as a beginner. Now I would say there is only one of her main DPS that is more free-to-play friendly than her, and that would be Phoebe. Simply because with Phoebe, all of her teammates are free if you're using San Juan Spectra Rover, and she's easily able to use 4-star weapons. But with that being said, I would say Carlotta is very accessible. And is absolutely a great choice if you're somebody that really wants a powerful character, but you're not really able to invest a whole lot right now. Another really nice thing about Carlotta is that she is amazing in all game modes. I will say that TOA is certainly her best, because it features boss enemies the most often. However, she is indeed still excellent in every endgame mode that you can think of, TOA of course being her best, and she's also pretty good in Whimpering Wastes. I will say her performance in wuwa is totally investment dependent, and you do have to actually be a little bit good at playing her in order to make it work. This is because the way you make it work is that you want to make sure that your death knells hit all of the enemies at once. And if your investment is high enough, those individual death knells are going to be able to take out individual wuwa waves. I will say that the recent wuwa did have quite high HP, but typically speaking, this is indeed the case. So if you're willing to practice positioning, then this single target-centric DPS is unironically able to perform pretty well in Whimpering Wastes, and she is amazing against hologram content. Because her skill is able to freeze enemies in place for a short period of time, you're offered a short moment of respite. And of course, considering how powerful she is against boss content, she naturally lends herself very well to hologram content. This means that no matter what mode that you're struggling with, you can easily pick up Carlotta and clear the mode with them. I will say that if you're somebody going for an S0 R0 Carlotta on Static Mist, I wouldn't prioritize her if Whimpering Wastes is your issue. Yes, you can make it work, but the higher investment your Carlotta is, the better she is in wuwa. However, if you're struggling in TOA or against holograms, then she is definitely a worthwhile pickup. Just know that if you're going to use her in wuwa, it's going to take a bit more effort, and you would ideally want her signature weapon. However, the point still stands that she's amazing in all endgame modes. She's also very high investment friendly, because yes, while she is indeed amazing for free-to-plays, you still get so much out of getting her signature weapon and getting her sequence nodes. Her sequences are still very strong even now, and her signature does a lot for her, and while she still feels amazing on Static Mist of course, the upgrade is undeniable. But it's not some unreasonable upgrade that makes you feel like you're totally missing out. It's a very reasonable upgrade. Not to mention how if you want to play her best hyper carry team, then Judge is a really good second soul teammate to invest into. Assuming that you'd like to specialize in her a little bit more. Even if you only get 2 or 3 sequence nodes or even just 1, that's going to be a noticeable upgrade to your Carlotta. She quite literally is a safe investment on all ends of the investment spectrum. However, we do still have to discuss some of Carlotta's flaws, and I would say the main one that's cropped up since her last banner is the fact that she's not necessarily the only one anymore, so to speak. Essentially, back whenever she came out, she was really ahead of the competition. Her damage was monstrously high, and there was no other main DPS that could really compete with her. And while her damage still remains up to par and is very much up to standard, other DPSs are able to perform her damage output now, meaning that her damage output, which is one of her main selling points, isn't that special anymore. You can recreate her highest damage output pretty easily with other main DPSs that have released during 2.x now. Meaning that instead of just damage alone, you have to take a look at her other factors to decide whether you want to pull for her or not. And I will say, she has a ton of these factors. You definitely have plenty of justifiable reasons to get her, but if you feel very satisfied with your current main DPS roster and you're clearing TOA very consistently, while I do think she's an amazing roster addition, especially considering that we're getting new tower floors soon, if you have enough teams to take on all tower floors, including the new ones that are going to be coming soon, she's not going to feel like she's as much of a necessity, or as much of a must-pull as she was back in 2.0, but I would still say her damage is still very cream of the crop. I'm just saying, her damage might not impress you that much if you're somebody that already has a really well-invested 2.x DPS. And then finally, AOE Shenanigans can be a little bit annoying with her. However, once again, this is something that can be very easily sorted out if you just learn her positioning. And of course, like I said earlier, how annoying it is just depends on your Carlotta's investment. The lower investment you are, the more you're going to struggle when it comes to AOE scenarios. The higher investment you are, the less you're going to find yourself struggling when using Carlotta in AOE. This character is so strong that you genuinely can brute force her in scenarios that have multiple targets, as long as you know what you're doing. Key words, as long as you know what you're doing. AOE doesn't brick her by any means, but it is going to feel a bit more difficult to use her in such situations. Carlotta's honestly aged really well. I'm very impressed with how Kuro Games managed to make such a timeless DPS. She genuinely has so much going for her. I would say if there's anything that really sells Carlotta in my opinion, is the fact that she's so accessible and yet so friendly for high investment at the same time. Her baseline is very, very nice. You don't need any specific 5-star teammate in order to make her feel like she's hitting the ground running. But if you invest a little bit more into her, and you even invest a little bit more time into learning better gameplay techniques with her, then you can really get some impressive performance there. Fantastic unit, and I can definitely see you justifiably pulling her even now, and if you really need a good Glacio DPS, I personally don't think we're gonna get a replacement for her for quite some time. How about yourself? Are you gonna be pulling for her, or is it a skip for you? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully this video is able to tell you Carlotta's biggest pros and cons. This has been Juice, signing out. And in my personal opinion, she is still one of the prettiest characters in this game.